Hello, this is D, and I'm back with another video. Well, my last video, I touched on the Bloomberg report stating that the PlayStation 5 was actually costing more than they anticipated and that their actual cost was $450 for the system. Now, there was a lot of information in that article that I didn't really get to cover in the last video, so I decided to take this time now just to go through some other interesting tidbits that came from that report. Now, one of the things that I found really interesting coming from that report is that Sony actually planned to release a different type of camera and developers weren't really for it. Now, I'm just going to quote from the article. It said that Sony has already canceled some previously planned features for a new mirrorless camera due this year only to the constraints of the DRAM supply. Now, I'm not too sure if it's due to the DRAM supply for their camera, but I am hearing that some developers didn't like this new mirrorless camera and that because of that they decided to cancel it. Now, I find it really interesting that Sony almost did the same mistake that Microsoft did last generation by trying to introduce a camera and bundle it with the system. Now, this mirrorless camera that was canceled obviously would have added some more cost to the PlayStation 5, so this is probably a good thing that it was canceled, as the PlayStation 5 will be a little bit more affordable now, especially seeing how they're kind of constrained with the price due to the cost of the system being a little bit higher than they anticipated. Now, another thing I found really interesting is that they are planning to release a second generation of PlayStation VR. Now, a second generation PlayStation VR headset I would assume would have a higher resolution and would run at a higher frequency than the current generation PlayStation VR headset. I also believe that the PlayStation VR, the second generation of it, is going to be wireless. I've always been a believer that Sony will make VR a mainstream thing, and I think the PlayStation VR being wireless is a step in the direction to actually achieving this goal. Now, what I really want to talk about in this video today is the fact that Sony has invested more money into the cooling of the PlayStation 5. Now, it goes on to say in the article that most of the components for the console have been locked down, people said, including the cooling system, which is unusually expensive at a few dollars per unit. Typically, companies would spend less than $1, but Sony opted to lavish more in making sure the heat dissipation from the powerful chip housed inside the console isn't an issue. Now, this brings me right back to the previous leak where it said that the PlayStation 5 is clocked at 2 gigahertz in the GitHub leak that we got when they were doing some of the testing on the system. Now, there were some things that were omitted from that. We didn't see any ray tracing on that system, although I do believe the PlayStation 5 will have hardware ray tracing. I just don't think those tests reflected that, but that test was an actual test of the PlayStation 5 and it was clocked at 2 gigahertz. And I've said for a long time, like, how could they achieve 2 gigahertz? It's not really stable. It's pretty high for a console. Now, with the latest report that Sony invested more in their cooling system, it's starting to make sense, and I'm starting to see that maybe, quite possibly, the PlayStation 5 will be clocked at 2 gigahertz. Now, the reason why they would clock so high is to try to overcome the deficit that they have from the Xbox Series X. Now, everything that we're hearing right now is that the Xbox Series X is substantially more powerful than the PlayStation 5. I'm gonna say maybe around a 3 teraflop difference. I think that the PlayStation 5 is gonna land between 9 and 10 teraflops, and from what we've heard thus far, it appears that the Xbox Series X is targeting 12 teraflops of performance. Now, with Sony investing more in their cooling system to get their clocks higher and to have it stable so they don't have an episode like what Microsoft experienced with the Ring of Death on the Xbox 360, I think this is a smart move on Sony, but at the same time, it's also making the cost of the PlayStation 5 a little bit more expensive than usual. Now, I really want to see the cooling system that they're talking about, because I always thought for them to achieve at least 2 gigahertz stable that they'd have to liquid cool the system. Now, liquid cooling I think would cost a little bit more than what this article is saying, so let's kind of throw that out the window and not assume that it's going to be liquid cooled, because I just don't see a console, quite frankly, being liquid cooled. But once again, the article is stating that Sony has spent more money than usual to keep the system cool. Now, I have seen some concepts out there that kind of look like the dev kit, but just a little bit more refined. Perhaps they have a whole bunch of fans in there. I'm not quite sure, but if Sony can achieve a 2 gigahertz stable clock on the PlayStation 5, this is quite a feat, and this is how I could see them reaching 10 teraflops of performance on the PlayStation 5 and narrowing the gap between them and the Xbox Series X. Anyways, I want to know what you guys think about all of this. Do you think that the PlayStation 5 will be clocked at 2 gigahertz? And if so, what type of cooling do you think the system will have? Also, I want to know if you guys think that the Xbox Series X will be substantially more powerful than the PlayStation 5. Now, let me know in the comment section down below, and keep it civil, everybody. And like I usually say, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys on the next one.